The moving truck pulled away from the curb, leaving Andrew standing in his driveway, keys jingling in his hand as he looked up at his new home. After 5 years of saving every extra penny and working countless overtime shifts, he had finally done it, bought his own house in Oakwood Estates, one of the most well-kept neighborhoods in the city. The 2-story brick house wasn't huge, but it was his. The previous owners had left the garden a bit wild, but Andrew already had plans for that. He walked across the freshly cut lawn, breathing in the scent of his new beginning. "Hey there, welcome to the neighborhood." Andrew turned to see an older man waving from across the street. The neighbor crossed over, hand extended. "I'm Tom, live right over there with my wife Linda for about 15 years now." Andrew shook his hand firmly. "Nice to meet you. I'm Andrew. Just closed on the house last week." "Well, you picked a good one. The Hendersons took good care of the place before they moved to Florida." Tom looked around appreciatively. "Just a heads up though, we've got ourselves a pretty active HOA here. They can be particular." Andrew nodded. He'd done his research before buying. "I read through all the guidelines before making an offer. Already planning to paint the fence the approved shade of beige next weekend." Tom chuckled. "Smart man. You'll stay off Pamela's radar that way." "Pamela?" HOA president. Takes her job very seriously. She's been known to walk around with a ruler measuring grass height. Tom's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Anyway, need any help with the unpacking? I'm pretty handy." "I appreciate that. Maybe I'll take you up on it when I start putting together all that furniture still in boxes." After Tom headed back home, Andrew spent the rest of the day organizing his belongings. As the sun began to set, he sat on his front porch with a cold drink, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. Kids were being called in for dinner, sprinklers turned off, and porch lights flickered on one by one. A woman in her 50s with blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail walked by, clipboard in hand. She slowed as she approached Andrew's house, her eyes scanning the property methodically. She made no attempt to introduce herself, just made a note on her clipboard and continued her patrol. "That would be Pamela," a voice called out. Andrew turned to see a young woman walking her dog. "She's doing her evening inspection." "Does she do that every day?" Andrew asked. "Like clockwork." "I'm Tisha, by the way. Welcome to Oakwood." Over the next few days, Andrew threw himself into making the house his own. He carefully reviewed the HOA handbook, making sure every change he made was by the book. He painted his mailbox the required forest green, installed the regulation house numbers, and made sure his trash cans were always tucked neatly out of sight. As one of the few black homeowners in the predominantly white neighborhood, Andrew felt an unspoken pressure to do everything right. He'd worked too hard for this opportunity to give anyone reason to complain. On Saturday morning, Andrew was planting new flowers in the front garden when a silver Mercedes pulled up across the street. The blonde woman he'd seen with the clipboard stepped out, surrounded by a group of other homeowners. They were all nodding as she spoke, pointing at various houses. One of the group spotted Andrew and waved. As they approached, Andrew stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "So you're the new owner," Pamela said, looking him up and down. It wasn't a question. "I'm Pamela Whitfield, president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association." "Andrew, nice to meet you." "Those flowers aren't on the approved plant list," she said, looking at the bright red geraniums he'd just put in. Andrew kept his smile steady. "Actually, they are. Page 12 of the guidelines, under approved perennial flowers. I checked before buying them." Pamela's smile tightened. "Well, someone's done their homework." She handed him a sheet of paper. "Here's the newsletter with our upcoming events, and a reminder that all exterior renovations need board approval first." As the group moved on, Andrew looked down at the crisp community newsletter in his hand. He'd gotten through his first encounter with the infamous HOA president. Little did he know this was just the beginning of what would become the neighborhood's most talked-about dispute in years. 3 weeks flew by quickly. Andrew had settled into a comfortable routine in his new home. Each morning, he'd have coffee on his back porch, listening to birds before heading to his job at the tech company downtown. His evenings were spent unpacking the last few boxes and getting to know some of his friendlier neighbors. Thursday started like any other day. Andrew left for work at 7:30 a.m., waving to Tom, who was out collecting his newspaper. The workday was busy with back-to-back meetings, and Andrew was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. At 6:15 p.m., he turned onto his street, tired but satisfied after finishing a major project. As his house came into view, Andrew slowed his car, confused by what he was seeing. A silver Mercedes was parked in his driveway, right where he usually parked his own car. "What in the world?" he muttered, pulling up to the curb instead. Andrew sat for a moment, wondering if there had been some mix-up. Maybe someone was visiting a neighbor and got confused about which driveway to use. He grabbed his laptop bag and walked up to his house, keys in hand. No one was around the car. No note on the windshield. Through the windows, he could see a designer purse on the passenger seat and what looked like HOA paperwork scattered across the dashboard. A sinking feeling settled in Andrew's stomach. He recognized that car now. It was Pamela's. Andrew glanced at his watch. He was tired and hungry, but this needed to be addressed. He set his things inside his house and then walked down the street toward Pamela's large corner lot home with its perfectly manicured lawn. He rang the doorbell twice before Pamela answered, looking annoyed at the interruption. "Yes," she asked, not bothering with a greeting. "Hi, Pamela, I'm Andrew from down the street. We met a few weeks ago when I moved in." "I remember," she said flatly. "Well, there seems to be a mix-up. Your car is parked in my driveway right now." Pamela's expression didn't change. "Of that? I was delivering violation notices on your street and needed to make a quick call. Your driveway was convenient." Andrew took a deep breath. "I understand, but that's my private property. Next time, could you please ask permission first, or park on the street?" Pamela looked at him as if he'd suggested something ridiculous. "I was only there for a moment while performing my HOA duties. I'm about to leave anyway." "Still, it's my driveway," Andrew persisted. "I'd appreciate." "You're making a big deal out of nothing," Pamela cut him off. "This is a tight-knit community. We don't get worked up over small things like momentary parking." Before Andrew could respond, she continued, "I have dinner guests arriving soon. I'll move my car in a few minutes." She started to close the door. "I'd like it moved now, please," Andrew said firmly, putting his foot forward to stop the door from closing completely. Pamela's eyes narrowed. "Fine. If you're going to be difficult about this." She grabbed her keys from a hook by the door and brushed past him. Andrew followed her back to his house, maintaining a respectful distance. Without another word, Pamela got into her Mercedes and backed out of his driveway, driving away without so much as a wave or an apology. Andrew stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. It wasn't the parking itself that bothered him so much as Pamela's attitude, as if she had every right to use his property without asking, and he was the one being unreasonable. His neighbor Tom was out watering plants and had witnessed the exchange. He walked over, garden hose in hand. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Just a misunderstanding about parking," Andrew replied. Tom's expression told Andrew this wasn't new behavior. "Let me guess, Pamela used your driveway like it was community property." "Exactly that. She pulls that with newcomers sometimes. Testing boundaries, I think." Tom shook his head. Probably best to let it go this time, but he hesitated. "But what?" "Just keep an eye out. Pamela doesn't like being told no, and she's got a long memory." As Tom walked back to his yard, Andrew looked down his peaceful street, wondering if he'd just started a neighborhood feud by simply asking for basic respect of his property. He hoped this was just a one-time occurrence that wouldn't happen again. Unfortunately for Andrew, this was only the beginning. Andrew hoped the driveway incident with Pamela was just a one-time thing. Unfortunately, that hope didn't last long. The following Tuesday, Andrew came home from a lunch meeting to find the silver Mercedes sitting in his driveway again. This time, he didn't bother walking to Pamela's house. He called her instead, using the HOA contact list he'd been given when he moved in. "Pamela, it's Andrew. Your car is in my driveway again." "Oh, right," she said, sounding completely unbothered. "I'm at Brenda's house across the street for our garden committee meeting. All the street parking was taken." "That doesn't make it okay to use my driveway without asking," Andrew said, keeping his voice calm but firm. "It's just for an hour," Pamela replied. "We're almost finished." "Pamela, I'd like you to move your car now, please." A heavy sigh came through the phone. "Fine. I'll tell everyone we need to wrap up early." 20 minutes later, Pamela finally appeared, looking irritated as she got into her car. She backed out without acknowledging Andra, who was standing on his porch watching to make sure she actually left. Later that evening, Andra bought a small security camera and installed it facing his driveway. He had a feeling he might need evidence if this pattern continued. His instincts proved right. Over the next 2 weeks, Pamela parked in his driveway 4 more times. Each time, Andrew documented it with photos from his security camera, noting the date and time. The excuses varied. "I was just turning around." "I needed to drop these flyers at your next-door neighbor's house." "I had to make a quick phone call." The garbage truck was blocking the street. What didn't vary was Pamela's dismissive attitude. Each time Andrew confronted her, she acted like he was overreacting to something trivial. After the 6th incident, Andrew was in his front yard planting new bushes when Tisha walked by with her dog. "Having trouble with our HOA queen?" she asked, nodding toward Andrew's phone where he was reviewing the latest security footage. "You could say that," Andrew replied. "She keeps using my driveway like it's public parking." "She did the same thing to the Chen family when they moved in last year," Tisha said. "They eventually put up a chain across their driveway when they weren't home." "That shouldn't be necessary," Andrew said, shaking his head. "It's private property. Try telling Pamela that. She's lived here for 20 years and thinks she runs the place." The next morning, a Saturday, Andrew was working from home when the now familiar sound of tires on his driveway caught his attention. He looked out the window to see Pamela's Mercedes parked there again. This time, she wasn't even pretending to be dropping something off. She had parked and was walking toward the community pool 2 blocks away, beach bag in hand. Andrew grabbed his phone and walked outside, catching up to her at the end of his walkway. "Pamela, we need to talk about this." She turned, sunglasses hiding her eyes. "About what?" "You know exactly what. This is the 7th time you've parked in my driveway without permission." "Oh please," she said with a wave of her hand. "The community pool lot is full, and your driveway was empty. What's the big deal?" "The big deal is that it's my property," Andrew said, his patience wearing thin. "Would you like it if I started parking in your driveway whenever I felt like it?" Pamela's mouth tightened. "That's completely different." "How is it different?" "Well," she hesitated, then squared her shoulders. "I'm the HOA president. I have certain privileges in this community." Andrew couldn't believe what he was hearing. Being HOA president doesn't give you the right to use other people's property without permission. "You people are always so territorial," Pamela muttered, just loud enough for Andrew to hear. Andrew felt a flush of anger. "What do you mean by you people?" Pamela didn't answer. Instead, she said, "Fine, I'll move my car. But you should really learn how things work around here. We're a community." As she walked back to move her car, Andrew took a deep breath. This wasn't just about a parking spot anymore. Something told him that Pamela's behavior wasn't going to stop on its own. He needed to take more serious action before things got even worse. The monthly HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at the community center. Andrew had never attended one before, but after Pamela's 7th unauthorized use of his driveway, he knew it was time to bring the issue to the wider community. He arrived 15 minutes early, surprised to find the room already half full. About 30 neighbors sat in folding chairs, chatting in small groups. Andrew recognized a few faces, including Tom and Tisha, who both gave him friendly waves. "First HOA meeting?" asked an older woman who took the seat next to him. "That obvious, huh?" Andrew smiled. "You've got that hopeful look. It'll fade," she chuckled. "I'm Beverly, been here 12 years. Andrew, just moved in last month." "Ah, you bought the Henderson place. Nice house." Beverly leaned closer. "So what brings you here tonight?" Most newcomers avoid these meetings like the plague. Before Andrew could answer, Pamela walked in with 2 other board members. She carried a leather portfolio and had a stack of papers that another board member was helping distribute. Her eyes swept the room, narrowing slightly when she spotted Andrew. "Looks like our meeting is about to start," Beverly whispered. "Good luck with whatever you're here for." Pamela called the meeting to order exactly at 7 o'clock p.m. The first 30 minutes were painfully boring, budget reports, discussions about seasonal decorations for the neighborhood entrances, and debates about changing the pool hours. Finally, Pamela asked, "Any new business from community members?" Andrew raised his hand. Pamela seemed to look past him at first, but when no one else volunteered, she reluctantly acknowledged him. "Yes, our new neighbor. Andrew, is it?" "That's right." Andrew stood up, feeling all eyes on him. "I wanted to bring up an ongoing issue I've been having. Over the past month, someone has repeatedly parked in my private driveway without permission. I've asked them to stop multiple times, but it continues to happen." Murmurs spread through the room. Andrew pulled out his phone. "I've documented 7 separate incidents with photos and videos from my security camera." He held up his phone, showing one of the clearer images of Pamela's silver Mercedes in his driveway. The most recent was just last weekend. Pamela's face flushed. "This is hardly an appropriate use of meeting time. This sounds like a personal dispute that should be handled privately." "I've tried handling it privately," Andrew replied calmly. 7 times, in fact. But the situation hasn't improved. "Whose car is it?" someone called out from the back. Andrew hesitated, then said, "It's a silver Mercedes. License plate number TPF 239. Several heads turned toward Pamela, who was known for her silver Mercedes. "This is ridiculous," Pamela snapped. "I've occasionally used empty driveways for brief stops while conducting official HOA business. It's never been an issue before." "It's an issue for me," Andrew said firmly. "And I don't think I'm being unreasonable in asking that my private property be respected." To Andrew's surprise, Tom stood up. "I've witnessed this happening multiple times. And I'm sorry, Pamela, but using someone's driveway without permission isn't conducting HOA business. It's trespassing." A woman near the front raised her hand. "The same thing happened to us when we first moved in. We thought it was just us." "Us too," called another voice. "For almost 3 months." Suddenly, the floodgates opened. One after another, neighbors, particularly newer ones, shared similar experiences. Some had dealt with unauthorized parking, others with excessive violation notices for minor infractions that longtime residents seemed immune to. Pamela banged her gavel repeatedly. "This is not the purpose of our meeting. We have a schedule to maintain." "Actually," said a gray-haired man who Andrew recognized as the HOA vice president, "addressing resident concerns is exactly the purpose of these meetings." The room hummed with agreement. Pamela's face had gone from flushed to pale. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth. "The board will review these concerns and discuss appropriate action. Now, moving on to the next agenda item." As the meeting continued, several neighbors approached Andrew during a short break, sharing their own stories and offering support. For the first time since moving in, he felt like part of the community. "You did good," Beverly whispered, patting his arm. "Nobody stood up to her like that in years." Andrew nodded, but he couldn't help noticing the icy glare Pamela shot him from across the room. He had a feeling this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The day after the HOA meeting, Andrew sat in his home office, staring at his computer screen but not really seeing it. The support from his neighbors had been unexpected and heartwarming, but he knew the problem wasn't solved. If anything, he worried that Pamela might step up her behavior now that he publicly challenged her. His phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Heard Pamela complaining at the coffee shop this morning. Watch your back." Andrew sighed and picked up his phone to call his cousin Ray, who worked as a lawyer. "So she's using your driveway without permission even after you've told her to stop?" Ray asked after Andrew explained the situation. 7 times now, Andrew confirmed. "That's simple. It's your private property. You have every right to have unauthorized vehicles towed. You think that's what I should do? If you've already asked her multiple times to stop, absolutely. But make sure you have clear signage first. Get a no parking. Violators will be towed sign and put it where it's visible. Document that you've installed it. Then if she does it again, you're legally protected." Andrew thanked his cousin and spent his lunch break driving to the hardware store. He bought 2 metal signs and installed them that evening, one at the entrance to his driveway and another on the side of his garage. He took photos of the signs in place, then called a local towing company to set up an account. "We can be there within 15 minutes of your call," the dispatcher assured him. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. Andrew started to wonder if the signs had done their job. Maybe Pamela had finally gotten the message. On Saturday afternoon, Andrew was working in his backyard when his phone chimed with a security alert. He checked the app to see Pamela's silver Mercedes pulling into his driveway. Disbelief turned quickly to determination. Andrew walked around to the front of his house, where he found Pamela heading toward his next-door neighbor's house with a stack of flyers. "Pamela," he called out, pointing to the sign. "Did you see that?" She glanced at the sign, then waved dismissively. "I'll just be a minute. I'm delivering the community newsletter." "The sign doesn't say no parking unless it's just for a minute." "It says no parking," Andrew replied firmly. "I've asked you repeatedly not to use my driveway. Please move your car now." Pamela put a hand on her hip. "You're being ridiculous. This is how our community works. We help each other out." "Helping each other out requires consent from both parties," Andrew said. "I'm not giving mine. Please move your car now, or I'll have it towed." "You wouldn't dare," she said, her eyes narrowing. Andrew pulled out his phone. "Last chance, Pamela." "Go ahead and try," she huffed, turning away to continue delivering her flyers. "I'll be back in 5 minutes anyway." Andrew didn't hesitate. He called the towing company, gave them his account information, and described the vehicle. The dispatcher promised someone would be there within 15 minutes. True to their word, a tow truck arrived 12 minutes later. By then, Pamela had finished her deliveries but had stopped to chat with another neighbor, her car still in Andrew's driveway. When she saw the tow truck pull up, her face went white. She rushed over, waving her arms. "Wait, that's my car. I was just about to move it." "Ma'am, I've been called to remove an unauthorized vehicle from private property," the driver said, already lowering the gear to hook up the Mercedes. "This is a mistake," Pamela insisted, turning to Andrew. "Tell him this is a mistake." "No mistake," Andrew said calmly. "I warned you multiple times. There are signs clearly posted. You chose to ignore them. You can't do this." "Actually, he can," the tow truck driver said. "It's his property. You'll need to come to our lot to claim your vehicle. The fee is $275, cash or credit card only." Pamela's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and fury as her Mercedes was hoisted onto the truck. Neighbors had begun to gather, watching the scene unfold from their yards and windows. "This isn't over," Pamela hissed at Andrew as the tow truck pulled away with her car. "You're right," Andrew replied quietly. "It isn't over until you respect my property rights. The choice is yours." As Pamela stormed off to call someone for a ride, Tom walked over and stood beside Andrew. "Well," he said with a low whistle, "you really did it." "I didn't want to," Andrew replied. "But sometimes you have to draw a clear line." "True enough," Tom nodded. "But Pamela doesn't like losing. Be ready for what comes next." The morning after the towing incident, Andrew found a yellow violation notice stuck to his front door. According to the paper, his grass was a 1/4 inch too tall, and he had exactly 48 hours to fix it or face a fine. He shook his head, took a photo of the perfectly reasonable grass height, and mowed it anyway. 2 days later, another notice appeared, this time claiming his mailbox was the wrong shade of green. Andrew pulled out the HOA handbook, took a photo of the mailbox next to the color chart, and emailed proof that it was, in fact, the exact approved color. The notices kept coming. 5 in 1 week. His garbage cans were visible from the street, they weren't. His holiday lights remained up too long, he hadn't put any up. His garden hose was improperly stored, it was coiled on a proper reel. His front door wreath violated decoration guidelines, it was a plain green wreath. His car leaked oil in the driveway, it didn't, his car was brand new. Andrew carefully documented each false claim with photos and videos, keeping a folder of evidence on his computer. He also started noticing neighbors watching him with curious expressions when he was outside. Some who had been friendly before now seemed hesitant to wave or chat. At the grocery store, he ran into Beverly, who had sat next to him at the HOA meeting. "Heard you're racking up violations," she said, selecting an apple from the produce section. "All bogus," Andrew replied. "Pamela's just upset about her car." Beverly nodded. "She's been talking about you at her little coffee gatherings. Telling folks you're aggressive and don't understand community values. Classic Pamela move, When she can't win fairly, she tries to turn people against you. Andrew sighed. Great. Don't worry too much, Beverly patted his arm. Most people see through it. Those who've been here a while know her tactics. As weeks passed, some neighbors did seem to distance themselves, but others made a point of being more friendly. Tisha brought over homemade cookies. Tom helped Andrew install a new security light. The Chen family invited him to their barbecue. Just when things seemed to be calming down, the situation took another turn. Andrew was working from home one Tuesday morning when he had a car pull into his driveway. Looking out the window, he couldn't believe his eyes. Pamela's silver Mercedes was there again, and she was getting out with her designer purse, looking right at his house. This wasn't a quick drop-off or a mistake. She had parked deliberately, in broad daylight, knowing he was home. Andrew grabbed his phone and went outside. Pamela, you need to move your car. She smiled coldly. I'm attending a garden committee meeting across the street. The hostess is expecting me. That's not my problem. You can't park in my driveway. I believe I can, she said, locking her car. There's no street parking available, and as a community leader, I have responsibilities. The signs are right there. Andrew pointed to the no parking signs. You've already had your car towed once from this exact spot. And you've received how many violation notices since then? Pamela asked sweetly. Perhaps we could call it even. I'll park here where needed, and those violations might just disappear. Andrew couldn't believe what he was hearing. Are you actually trying to blackmail me with fake HOA violations? Blackmail is such an ugly word, Pamela replied. I prefer community compromise. Andrew looked at her, then at her car, then back at her. Move your car now, or I'm calling the towing company again. Pamela smacked. What are you going to do about it? Watch me, Andrew said, pulling out his phone. You wouldn't dare. Not while I'm standing right here. Andrew dialed the number without breaking eye contact. Hello? Yes, I need a tow from 1842 Oakwood Drive. Yes, same car as last time. Silver Mercedes, license plate TPF 239. Pamela's eyes widened. You're actually doing it, while I'm standing right here watching you. You left me no choice, Andrew replied calmly. They'll be here in 15 minutes. This is harassment, Pamela sputtered. No, this is consequences, Andrew corrected her. Parking in someone's driveway without permission is trespassing. I've asked you repeatedly to stop. You refused. Now you're facing the results of your own actions. Several neighbors had come outside, watching the confrontation unfold. Pamela looked around, suddenly aware of the audience. Fine, she snapped, fumbling for her keys. I'll move it, but the board will hear about this. Good, Andrew replied. While you're at it, tell them about all the false violations and how you just tried to blackmail me. I'm sure they'll be very interested. Red-faced, Pamela got into her car and backed out so quickly she nearly hit a mailbox. As she drove away, Andrew canceled the tow truck. Tom, who had witnessed everything from his front yard, walked over shaking his head. That woman never learns, he said. But I've got to hand it to you, you've got guts. Andrew smiled, but he knew this wasn't over yet. Something had to give. Word about the second near-towing spread through Oakwood estates like wildfire. By dinner time, Andrew had received 5 text messages and 3 phone calls from neighbors who had witnessed or heard about the confrontation. Did she really try to blackmail you with fake violations? Tisha asked when she called. Pretty much, Andrew confirmed. Right there in my driveway in broad daylight. The next morning, Andrew was surprised to find the vice president of the HOA, a retired judge named Richard, at his door. Got a minute? Richard asked. I think we need to talk about what's been happening. Over coffee at Andrew's kitchen table, Richard listened carefully as Andrew showed him the security footage, the falsified violation notices, and explained the parking incidents in detail. This has gone beyond a simple dispute, Richard said, shaking his head. The HOA board exists to enforce rules fairly, not to harass residents. What Pamela's doing is an abuse of power. What can be done about it? Andrew asked. Our bylaws include a process for removing board members who misuse their position, Richard explained. I've been on this board for 12 years, and I've never suggested using it before. But this, he gestured at the pile of fake violations, this crosses a line. That evening, Richard called an emergency meeting of the HOA board without Pamela. After reviewing Andrew's evidence, they agreed to hold a special community meeting the following week. News of the upcoming meeting spread quickly. Andrew received a flood of messages from neighbors sharing their own stories about Pamela's unfair treatment. Some had been afraid to speak up before, worried about becoming her next target. The day of the meeting arrived. The community center was packed. Nearly every household had at least one person there. Pamela sat in the front row, arms crossed, glaring as Richard called the meeting to order. "We're here today to address concerns about HOA leadership," Richard began. "Specifically, allegations that our current president has been abusing her position to carry out personal vendettas against residents." Pamela jumped to her feet. "This is outrageous. I've given 15 years to this community." "Please sit down, Pamela," Richard said firmly. "Everyone will have a chance to speak." One by one, neighbors stood to share their experiences. The Chen family described being targeted with daily violations when they first moved in until they threatened legal action. An elderly couple explained how Pamela had blocked their request to install a wheelchair ramp until the county got involved. A young single mother told how she'd received a violation for having toys visible in her backyard. Andrew was the last to speak. He didn't raise his voice or make accusations. He simply showed the video footage of Pamela repeatedly parking in his driveway, played the recording of her attempted blackmail, and displayed the false violation notices. When he finished, the room was silent. Richard cleared his throat. "Our bylaws state that a board member can be removed with a 2/3 majority vote if they violated the community's trust. I'm calling for that vote now." Pamela's face had gone from angry to shocked as she realized what was happening. "You can't do this. I've run this HOA for 15 years. And maybe that's been too long," Beverly called from the back of the room. "Power shouldn't belong to one person forever." The vote wasn't even close. Out of 92 households represented, 87 voted to remove Pamela from the board. Richard was elected interim president until proper elections could be held. As people filed out after the meeting, many stopped to thank Andrew for standing up to Pamela when no one else would. To his surprise, Richard asked if he would consider joining the board. "We need people who understand that rules should be fair and applied equally," Richard explained. "Someone who's willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult." 2 weeks later, Andrew attended his first meeting as a new board member. The group's first action was to draft clearer guidelines about respecting private property and a formal process for reporting harassment. Pamela still lived in the neighborhood, but she kept to herself now. When she saw Andrew coming, she would turn and walk the other way. Her silver Mercedes never appeared in his driveway again. As Andrew settled into his role on the board, he found himself becoming more invested in the community. The simple act of standing up for himself had created ripples that changed things for everyone. Sometimes, he realized, the most important difference you can make is simply refusing to accept injustice, even when it's just someone parking in your driveway.